there's something else going on with Asians. Asians in school. And this has been brewing for a while. So Asians are fed up with being discriminated against in the high school system, the university system. And this comes from Newsweek by Helen Raleigh. And the San Francisco School Board, the title of the article is "The San Francisco School Board Recall Shows a New Political Awakening of Asian Americans." Helen writes, "An overwhelming majority of voters in San Francisco just chose to oust 3 leftist school board members via recall. Apparently, in the most progressive city in America, the board members' ideologically driven policies and actions have gone too far this time. They've just gone too far. The 3 school board members who lost their seats are Board President Gabriela Lopez, Commissioners Faga Maliga, and Allison Collins. The city's Democratic Mayor, London Breed, who favored the recall campaign, will select 3 people to fill the newly vacant seats. The recall campaign was the grassroots effort led by Asian American parents who were frustrated over the school district's extended COVID-induced school closures. Kids in San Francisco's public schools didn't return full-time to in-person class until last August, long after schools in many parts of the country had already reopened. Besides prolonged school closures, parents were also upset that the city's progressive school board had demonstrated more interest in performative social justice activities than in providing quality education for all. It's become a performance. It's become a performance, and the curtains are closing. The school board has beclowned itself by trying to cover up a mural depicting slavery and Native Americans, as well as renaming 44 schools named after such titans as in American history as Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. If you can't name a school after Abraham Lincoln, if you can't have a school named after you for freeing the slaves, for literally ending one of the most dark and tragic and violent acts ever committed against a group of people, American slavery against black people, against Africans brought over to America, if you can't have a school named after you for ending that, what can you have a school named after you for? If you free the slaves, like, also, what will they allow Abe Lincoln to have a shop named after him for? Like, will he be allowed to have a bakery named after him, like Abe Lincoln Bakery? There's some limit to how many people, it's like, or what's going on inside the school. We can't name the building after Abe Lincoln where people's minds are being molded, because Abe Lincoln's racism may seep into their brains. So if it leaks into the bread, it's fine. We'll serve racist bread to people, but we're not going to teach the racist policies of Abraham Lincoln at Abraham Lincoln High School. This guy had the audacity to free the slaves. What a piece of shit. What should we name the school now? Colin Kaepernick High. I don't know. I mean, I feel like naming shit in general has just... People are much more invested in these surface level things that don't matter. I love how the name of the school is one of the main things that are going on in San Francisco and all over. The statues, names, whatever. Name shit whatever you want, but that should be number 1,000 on the list of what a school is doing. What are we teaching them in classrooms? How are we preparing kids to enter a world where most of the jobs that people have prepared for in the past are quickly being automated away? What about the fact that we've just had masks on their face for 2 years and we may need to reteach kids how to socialize? How about teaching kids how to write and read and be human beings and make a living out of something that they find purposeful and how to treat another human being. What is it? I'm so confused with the name of the school and why that's so important. Like, name it Garfield High. Who the fuck cares? As long as you are doing a good job teaching people. I'm talking to you on a podcast called The AUX, and I named it that because originally this platform was for interviewing music artists, and so AUX, the AUX cable, you plug it in to listen to music. But that doesn't mean anything for what I talk about. I like talking about music, and I still interview music artists and have conversations with them on the AUX Oral podcast, as well as people from many different backgrounds. But the name is not important. This could be called the Buttfuck Podcast, and I'd still hope that you get value out of it. And maybe it would even help with people checking it out because they're like, like buttfuck. I don't want to listen to that, but I have to though now. People getting butt fucked? Is it audio only butt fucking? What is going on? And it's the Buttfuck Podcast is just me talking about Abe Lincoln freeing the slaves, and it has nothing to do with that. But yeah, 44 schools after such titans as Abraham Lincoln and George Washington are being renamed. George Washington, though, I kind of get because his teeth were so fucked up. You can't be naming a school after people with wooden teeth. You can't be trying to teach hygiene in a school. Imagine going to George Washington High School and the teacher says, "Hey, when's the last time you brushed your teeth?" And you say, "The name of our school is based after a guy who had tree trunks in his mouth." Shut the hell up, Mrs. Farber. And then you come to school a week later and you're like, "Yo, where did Mrs. Farber go?" And another kid's like, "Oh, my mom told me she's a serial killer." And you're just like, "Oh, whatever." And then the name of your school gets changed and nothing happens. You're just like, all right, who gives a shit? Commissioner Collins called Merit. This is Allison Collins, one of the people taken off the school board. She called merit a racist construct. So now if you earn, the concept of earning things is racist. And we'll come back to that. Collins alienated Asian Americans further after some of her old tweets disparaging Asian Americans resurfaced. In one of those tweets, Collins accused Asian Americans of using white supremacist thinking to assimilate and get ahead. So Asians are now joining myself. Throw them all in the bucket. Throw them all in. It doesn't matter. You could be black, you could be Asian, you could be white, you could be brown, Native American, whatever. If you're earning anything, if you've earned a goddamn dollar in the past month, you're a white supremacist. Because you're trying to get ahead. By you accepting payment and reward and recognition for the things that you've done to make your small corner of the world a better place. I know what you're doing. You're listening to this podcast right now, thinking maybe I'll learn something. Maybe I'll waste 30 minutes of a drive listening to this guy's voice who doesn't know what he's talking about, but for some reason I can't stop listening. Maybe I'll get something out of this podcast, but I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. You're trying to get ahead, you fucking white supremacist. Jesus. Get yourself together and stop trying to earn shit. Stop trying. That's the only way. If you stop trying, you can disrobe yourself of the white supremacist robe you've been wearing by trying to be successful. Also, before that, let me read the tweets. So Allison Collins said, "My best friend from school says she feels alone in the Chinese community. She feels ostracized when she speaks up against anti-black hate. Where are the vocal Asians speaking up against Trump? don't Asian Americans know they are on his hit list as well? Maybe Asian Americans are worried about stopping attacks against their own people. Wasn't that Stop Asian Hate? That was the whole ordeal, you know? Different groups deal with different things. And I'm sure there are Asians out there that speak up against anti-black hate, and they may not be tweeting about it and creating a hashtag every 5 seconds because they're fucking studying. They're trying to get into school. They're trying to get into university. Maybe Asian culture just doesn't give a fuck about, you know, as much about this kind of cancel culture, woke Twitter bullshit. You know, maybe Asian culture is more tuned in to let people waste their time on Twitter. I'm going to fucking get ahead and do well in school, and I'm going to bring home a B plus, and my mom's going to tell me that I'm not of any worth to her unless I bring home 4 more A pluses in a row. Which I had Asian friends like that who definitely had way more pressure on them to become lawyers, doctors, whatever. I know it's such a cliche. But 2 of my best friends growing up were from Korea, Jimin and Andrew, and they 100% got more pressure from their parents. And I'm not saying all Asian parents pressure you to do well in school, but it seems like there's a lot of truth to the stereotype where when I would go over their houses, there was definitely more of a, like, get your shit together, like, stop fucking around, A or bust, A plus or die, you know, get a 4.0, so you're getting ready for medical school. And meanwhile, we're in 3rd grade and I'm just fucking eating a peanut butter sandwich as a chubby fat kid on the couch. But the rest of this tweet is ridiculous. So Allison Collins then goes on to say, did they think they won't be deported? Did they think they won't be profiled, beaten? Being a house N-word is still being a house N-word. You're still considered the help. So now Allison Collins is comparing Asians to house slaves because Asians are somehow just going with the white supremacy by succeeding and getting really high paying jobs and doing well and wanting to pass down that success generationally. Now that makes you a house slave, apparently. So I'm actually very confused by this. Like I'm not. I can't say I'm angry because this isn't really about me. I'm not part of the Asian community, but it just doesn't make sense. Like, there are poor Asians that are outscoring rich white kids on tests. How is that white supremacy? That's literally the opposite of privilege. There are a lot of Asians that they came over, their parents came over, and again, I feel like this is a culture thing. This isn't a privilege thing. This isn't a supremacy thing. There's something that's a part of Asian culture where the expectations are higher, the drive, the discipline seems to be instilled by the parents to a greater degree academically, and that seems to carry over whether you're coming from a rich Asian family or middle class or poor Asian family. It seems to be a through line to a lot of Asian cultures that you are expected to do well. I don't give a fuck if you don't have a lot of money, what the situation is, but it seems like that kind of it's like that bootstrapping mentality, but academically, like, you know, shit's not going to be easy, but at the very least, we expect you to do well in school. And no matter what is happening in your life, you are bringing home the fucking bread in the form of A's. And it seems like Asians, for whatever reason, that is a bigger part of their culture academically. Asians do well in school, and poor Asians are outscoring rich white kids on tests. So I don't get how that's privilege. That's the opposite of privilege. That's like having your arms tied behind your back in a fight and winning the fight anyway. Like having your arms tied behind you metaphorically, academically, and still beating the other kids in school. Whites, blacks, Latinos, Indians, whoever. Asians test high. And here's what I think it is. I think, like, you can't say it's white supremacy when Asians do well if you see Asians and white people as two separate things. And so Asians are outscoring everyone. Like I said, white, black, Latino, whoever. And so in order for the left to sell this as, and the extreme far left, this is not a common view held by the left. These people are fucking retarded that are getting kicked off this school board. In order for you to make merit white supremacy, you have to hook in the Asians with whites. So you have to take away their Asian identity or make them these house slaves somehow, where you're like, oh, Asians are just cooperating with white people because they want to get ahead. Which, by the way, have you ever been to Chinatown? Have you ever been in an Asian community? Like, it is, a lot of people don't even bother to speak the language. They are so in their own world. Like, they're just working, getting ahead. You know, go to Koreatown, go to Chinatown. Like, they're not being or like disregarding to white people in any way, but like in a lot of ways they don't give a fuck about what's going on around them. That's why it feels a different world when you walk into somewhere like a Chinatown. It's like, this is totally different. We've assimilated into New York City, but we still do our own shit. They're not you know, trying to butter white people up in any way. That if anything, I've seen the opposite. They're just like, they kind of see white people as just like another thing that's next to them, and they do business with white people, and they like that they can interact with them and make money. Just like if you do business with any group of people, you want to be able to understand them and speak with them, have interactions. But there's not a lot of evidence to support this. There's not any evidence to support this claim. You're just throwing shit out there and saying Asians are house slaves. But like, look, like, open your fucking eyes. And that's not meant to be a slight at all. But I'm literally like, open your eyes, Allison Collins, and look around at Asian communities and tell me if you see that they give a fuck about anything that you're saying they give a fuck about. Also, they should, it doesn't matter who is kicking your ass in testing. Whether you're Asian, black, white, Latino, whoever, if you are getting ahead, you should get the spot. If you kick anyone's ass in testing, if you're in school and you're getting higher grades on tests, you should get the spot. And if I kick your ass, I should get the spot. And vice versa. This whole thing doesn't make sense. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it should be like that I even have to say this, but merit is the great equalizer of opportunity. When you earn something, people are forced to acknowledge you. They're forced to accept you. They're forced to see you because you do something really well. And if you're crushing it in school, you're bringing home the bacon in tests, SATs, college acceptance, going on to secondary schools, things like that, making a lot of money, figuring out ways to do it, and coming from families that are not well off to begin with. If you figure that out, no matter who the fuck you are, you earned it. It should not be stripped away from you. You should not get rid of testing. Here's what I don't get. From what I understand, this was done because, and when I say this, you know, getting rid of merit in the curriculum, altering the tests and the curriculum, this is because Asians, there's a high percentage of Asians that are taking spots in schools, in high schools and secondary schools, not enough black kids in schools. There's an imbalance somehow that they see with race. So if you design a test and Asians of all backgrounds, poor, white, poor, middle class, rich, they're dominating. Why not look at what these students are doing to dominate the test, what their parents are saying to them, what the culture says about them, good and bad, because academics aren't everything. When you have pressure on you academically, there are downsides to that for sure. When you have that intense pressure all the time. But look at Asian communities and see what are they doing to score this high? What are they doing to get to this place? And instead of stripping away what they've earned, apply that to other students who need it. And teach them how to have the skills that, if we're going to keep tests this way, that Asians seem to build in a better way, a more efficient way. And if you're going to overhaul the system, don't do it to make it easier for a group of people to get in. That makes no sense, having a quality of outcome. But overhaul the tests in general. Just make it, think about making it a better quality test. Don't worry about, okay, is this test going to let in, or 50% of black people, 50% of white people, 30% Asians, 20% Latinos. Don't worry about the percentages of how people are going to test. That's fucking insane. And that's also the most racist thing ever, to say that because of the color of your skin, you're going to test in a certain way. Like you're going to get a certain score on a test because of where you came from. Does not make sense to me. Does not. It's more racist to stop Asians from getting into school because they're doing well. You're literally kicking them out because they're Asian, rather than looking at the testing system and looking at the students and saying, okay, what needs to change here? How can we get everyone on board with what Asians seem to be doing so well? And also, how can we make the test better? Because memorizing testing this way isn't everything. Maybe apply more creativity to it. Maybe change the way that that education is basically you just regurgitating facts back in the form of a Scantron. A, B, C, D, multiple choice. That doesn't prepare you for fucking anything except memorizing. I don't know 98% of the shit that I memorized in school because it wasn't tied to anything. So if anything, overhaul the system. Don't be racist and stop people from getting in because they're Asian or any race. Doesn't make sense. And stop these quotas. I'm all for trying to include everyone, but these quotas, they don't make sense. Because it should be, if you're testing to get into a great high school, the testing should be blind. You should not have a name. If it were me, I wouldn't even have race, ethnicity on the page. I would just have what the person's done, their answers for the test, their essay, whatever. Maybe it has some personal identifying information in the essay, but no race, no name. You just do a blind entrance, who they are, how they tested, and you let them in, and whatever percentage it is that year, it is that year. Maybe it's 80% Asian, maybe it's 20%, maybe it's 40% black, maybe it's 80%. Who gives a fuck? Just let in the people who are building, or let in the people who are earning what you've put in front of them. It's like you have this test that Asians have figured out, and then you're saying, well, you figured it out too well, so we're gonna punish you for excelling. And that kills people's spirits. And no surprise these board members got recalled, because it's fucking stupid. Imagine if the NBA was like, there's too many black people, and we need to start letting more whites, more Asians in. We need to make the NBA, instead of 85% black or whatever it is, we're going to make it 50%, 50%, whatever. We're going to make it 30% white, 30% Asian, and only 40% black. No one would watch the fucking NBA. Because owners don't care about what skin color you have when they're trying to win a game. And it just so happens that black people are better at basketball on average. And that's why the NBA is predominantly black, because the owners are looking for the best fucking players. If the NBA was like, we need to stop the number of black people getting into the NBA, getting drafted, that would be fucking absurd because you know they're the best players. They deserve it. If you have the skills and you're winning and you've performed well in college and high school, you deserve that spot. And it just so happens that a lot of people in the NBA are black. And school is the Asian NBA. That's basically what I'm saying, is that Asians ball the fuck out on tests. And you're basically saying, like, because you're balling out so hard on tests, because you're 360 windmilling SAT scores, we're actually going to stop you from getting into school. Like, stop dunking so hard on these tests, Asians. Like, chill the fuck out. Like, that makes zero sense. If whoever is doing well on the tests, close your eyes, fucking just care about how they performed and let people in. Does not make sense to me. But I'm also not the smartest person, so maybe I am racist for wanting to try. I guess but by recording this podcast, I'm a white supremacist because I'm trying to get ahead in the podcasting world.